So this election season, 12 News is talking to groups of voters who could make a big difference in what's expected to be a very close race.
12 News journalist Bram Resnick started our conversation with Gen Z voters, 4 of whom are casting a presidential ballot for the first time this upcoming November.
I sat down last week with 4 Gen Z voters, 19 and 20-year-old college students, Republicans and Democrats. You might wonder what they had in common. Well, they're all members of the COVID generation, students whose high school years were disrupted by the pandemic. I started by asking how that affected the way they look at their lives. How did COVID affect your education and your view of the world?
Suddenly you go from seeing people every day to being completely isolated. I mean, I kind of logged in my classes and went back to bed. I think a lot of people did that.
You only had your family during that time, so being able to broaden that reach is huge for me.
But it does make you focus on the things that matter, and the things that you care about and that you don't want to take for granted.
Once COVID was over, it was like building up in me during the period of lockdown, and then once it ended, I was ready to go out there and make a difference.
Do you believe your vote can make a difference?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. I feel like when you see a lot of things wrong, you want to do something about it, but there's this idea of like, I can't do anything. I think I just was like, I want to do something about it.
Let's go back to the beginning of June, before the debate on June 27th. The choices were Joe Biden and Donald Trump at that time. In one word, summarize your feeling about that choice you had.
Difficult.
Apprehensive.
Decisive.
I felt great. I knew who I was standing with.
Today, the choice is Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. One word, how do you feel about that?
Better.
I'm excited because I can finally see someone who looks like me in a position of leadership.
Still decisive.
And I think there's a new excitement on the left about this election, and that does bring a little worry, always. But I think I still feel great.
One issue, if you could nail down one issue that matters to you the most, what would it be?
Reproductive rights.
Climate change.
The economy.
Being pro-life.
Explain your decision, why that matters to you.
I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and something that's very important for us is the lives of the unborn, and protecting the lives of the unborn, because they're innocent, they're independent, they don't have the opportunity to make decisions for themselves.
I grew up in a middle-class household, a split family unit, so my mother worked at a college up in Prescott, and my dad worked as a stuntman most of his life. What I would say about the economy is it affects me personally, but it also affects every age group and every demographic of people in this country.
Scale of very optimistic to very pessimistic. Where would you rate yourself just about your outlook on life and your future?
That's in between. I tried my best to be a realist, but I also choose to have hope, which I think is not something that a lot of people have, which is hard. I go to community college. It's the only way I can afford to graduate. I'm actually really hoping my college starts to offer bachelor degrees so I can graduate without debt.
I think I'm also somewhere in between, maybe leaning a little bit optimistic. I mean, I think that the result of this next election will probably sway that scale, but I really like what you said about choosing to have hope. That's something I'm trying to do as well.
What do you think of the tone of the ads you're seeing, whether Republican, Democrat, or other?
I think it's deception, honestly. And so I think what they could do, instead of getting with a lot of these influencers and doing stuff like that, is promise to put Gen Z and younger people in higher positions when they start a presidential administration, to actually do a lot of good work for Gen Z, because they wield the power of the executive branch.
The pushing with Kamala with more current things like Chaperone and Charlie XCX when it comes to more pop culture stuff, I don't really agree with that. I think it's...
You're not Brat?
No. I like Charlie XCX. I do listen to her music. I just don't see why... I know it's trying to be relatable, but I don't really enjoy it.
A lot of times with voters, the emotional appeal tends to be a little more persuasive, because we're humans. We have emotions and we appeal to it. So that's what I've seen from the ads, and I think that's something the left does really well, and that's something the right, the Republican, we really have to work on, is that emotional appeal of like, okay, this really matters and this is why.
And I think I would like to see more ads that actually talk about policies and issues. I completely agree with you in terms of like Brat and all these kind of Gen Z marketing. It can be really fun and it can be a nice introduction, but I'm not sure that's how we want to receive information about the political candidate we're going to vote for.
What do you wish, based on what you've heard tonight, that Carson and Faith understood about you, your side?
I'm a transgender person. I'm non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I know that there's a big thing online about how transgender people are pushing things. I think it's that social media and trans people online are not a monolith. They're not a representation of trans people. I am a normal person. I have hobbies, I have friends, I have dogs, you know. There are things outside of it, and I think that you don't have to understand it. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to use my pronouns. I really don't care. All that I ask is that you understand that I'm a human being.
Not all of us are the same. And I would say there's not one right or wrong thing. I think it goes back to, again, a lot of my background and my upbringing is because of my faith. And that's why I care about a lot of issues, and that's why I align it with those things. And so I think a lot of times the freedom that's seen on different sides, it being taken away, is like, again, my freedom to choose to, again, protect the lives of the unborn. And that's something my faith is really strong on. Or something, we talked about with like pronouns, which I respect you telling us that, because that's not easy to say.
I think there's a lot of talk on the right about the left being very woke. And, you know, I think it's definitely true for some people, but a lot of us are just kind of trying to prioritize human rights and trying to make sure that we have respect for others. And I think that a lot of what you see that seems very extreme on the left is not representative of all of us. So there's a lot of us who are not so woke, but still very willing to have discourse and very willing to kind of come to compromises.
I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for the people that are close to me. I have 4 great buddies that talk to me regularly and are in my close circle. And I'd say I'm doing it more for them because of the personal stuff that has gone on in their lives is better than a sample pool of 1,000 or 10,000 people with a lot of these social issues.
We talked for over an hour, and I came away very impressed. You can tell from that last exchange how it's possible to have a civil dialogue with people you disagree with. So why are Gen Z voters so important this year? Data shows they cast ballots at a higher rate than younger voters in the past. And increasingly, they're setting the agenda for this election. Bram Resnick, 12 News.